Have you ever wondered if your thoughts are really yours? Or maybe somewhere along the way they started to be shaped by voices that you no longer notice? Voices that speak through the media, social networks, schools, culture. Voices that tell you what is right, what is beautiful, what is acceptable. We live in a world that prides itself on freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of choice, freedom to be whoever you want. But what if this freedom is just a well-constructed illusion? What if, while we believe we are choosing freely, we are actually just following programmed paths, like predictable pieces in a game we don't even know we are playing? In this video, we'll dive into George Orwell's masterpiece 1984. But be warned, it's not just literature. What Orwell wrote as fiction is in many ways happening before our eyes. He left us a warning manual, and to ignore it is to risk losing the most valuable thing we have, our minds. Let's understand how mass brainwashing works, how language, fear, and the manipulation of emotions can turn entire societies into obedient zombies, and most importantly, how to resist it. If you are interested in politics, psychology, philosophy, or simply feel that there is something wrong with the world, stay until the end. This video may change the way you see the reality around you. Before continuing, make sure you are already subscribed to the channel. This helps a lot and ensures that you don't miss any content like this. Now, to understand where it all begins, we need to take a step into the world where freedom has already been completely erased. The dystopian universe of 1984. Orwell's dystopia, a world ruled by fear. As we delve into the pages of 1984, we are transported to a suffocating universe where freedom is not only limited, it is inconceivable. In this world, the party does not just rule, it owns reality. And any attempt to question that reality is seen as a crime. A thought crime. The protagonist, Winston Smith, lives under the constant gaze of Big Brother, the ultimate symbol of control. No matter where you are, a screen is watching you. No matter what you say, a microphone could be listening. No matter what you think, your facial expression could give you away. Surveillance is total, and fear is the main tool of obedience. But Orwell goes beyond physical repression. He understands that true power lies not in punishing, but in shaping what people believe to be real. In the world of 1984, there are four main ministries. The Ministry of Truth, responsible for lying. The Ministry of Peace, in charge of war. The Ministry of Love, what torture. And the Ministry of Plenty, which guarantees scarcity. The names are deliberately contradictory. This inversion is part of the psychological game. The goal is not only to deceive, but to destroy any reference that allows us to distinguish right from wrong, true from false. When everything is confusing, the party reigns supreme because only it has the right to define what is real. Language is also manipulated. Newspeak emerges, a language that eliminates dangerous words, especially those involving freedom, critical thinking, and rebellion. If you don't have the words to express a thought, eventually you can no longer think it. And if you can't think it, you can't question it. That's the whole point. Domination of the mind before domination of the body. Winston, like few others, still has a shred of independent thought. But even he struggles with the constant fear of being discovered, not by actions but by thoughts. Because in this world, thinking differently is the greatest crime. This is the essence of 1984. A system that controls people not with bars, but with implanted ideas. An environment where there is no objective truth, only the truth of the party. If the party says 2 + 2 = 5, then 2 + 2 = 5. And if you doubt it, you are lost. But did all this just remain in the pages of a dystopia? In the next few minutes, we will dismantle every mechanism used by the party to wash minds and show how these same methods already operate silently in real life. And the scariest thing is, many people don't even realize it. The brainwashing machine, party tactics. Now that we understand the oppressive scenario of 1984, it's time to look at the deeper mechanisms that sustain this system. Orwell didn't create supernatural monsters. He created tools, scarily human ones, to shape the collective mind. Tools that, when used together, construct a parallel reality where questioning is impossible. The first of these is Newspeak. This new language created by the party had a single goal: to limit thought. By reducing people's vocabulary, They eliminated the possibility of formulating dangerous ideas. For example, if the word freedom does not exist, how can anyone desire to be free? Furthermore, if the only way to express an emotion or thought is the one the party allows, the entire population will start to think and feel the same way: controlled, predictable, obedient. The second tactic is doublethink. This concept is one of the most powerful and cruel in the book. Doublethink means simultaneously accepting two contradictory ideas and believing that both are true. It is believing that war is peace, that ignorance is strength, that loving the party is freedom. It creates a mind so confused that, to avoid mental suffering, the individual simply surrenders to the logic. Curve the oppressor. It is the collapse of reason. The third tool is story control. 1984 universe is rewritten every day. News, records, photos, everything is altered so that the party's official version is never contradicted. If yesterday they were at war with country A, today they are at war with country B. And country A has always been an ally. And if you remember something different, then you are wrong. It's that simple. It's the famous "who controls the past, controls the future." Who controls the present, controls the past. The fourth tactic is absolute vigilance. Screens that never turn off, hidden microphones, children trained to snitch on their own parents. In the world of Big Brother, even silence can be suspect. People live in fear of showing emotion because the wrong expression can be interpreted as betrayal. Control of the body becomes an extension of control of the mind. And finally, we have psychological horror. The party's oppression is not just external. It enters the soul. People disappear without explanation. Torture is used to reprogram thoughts. Pain is used not to punish but to recondition. The idea is not just to make you obey, it is to make you love your oppressor, to be grateful for being controlled. These methods combined form a sophisticated and efficient brainwashing machine, a system that breaks the mind, rebuilds identities, and eliminates any trace of resistance. The ultimate goal is not just submission, it is total conversion to the party's thinking. Now stop and think. How many of these methods have you seen, even if disguised, in our current world? How many words are being eliminated from our vocabulary for social reasons? How many truths are shaped daily by headlines, clippings, and algorithms? How many times have you felt that you need to think twice before expressing your opinion? These questions will begin to make even more sense in the next chapter when we draw real, concrete parallels between Orwell's dystopia and the modern world. If this content is making you think, don't forget to leave a like. This shows that it's worth continuing to bring videos like this and help spread this message to more people. The mirror of reality. How 1984 is already happening. If up until now everything seemed like just an exaggerated literary work, now is the time to face the discomfort. 1984 is not just a metaphor. It is, in many ways, a mirror of the reality we are living in, and often accepting without realizing it. Let's start with the language. Orwell created Newspeak to destroy the ability to think. Today we are experiencing something similar. Words are constantly removed from the collective vocabulary on the grounds that they are offensive or inappropriate. The intention to protect is valid, but the side effect is dangerous: emotional and intellectual censorship. When you limit a society's vocabulary, you also limit its ability to reflect, question, and disagree. Think about how taboo certain words or expressions have become, not because they are legally prohibited, but because the social reaction to them has become violent. This creates a self-censorship effect. People stop saying certain things, and gradually even stop thinking about them, just as Orwell described. Now let's move on to narrative control. In the dystopia of 1984, the party rewrites the past. Today, this happens through the manipulation of information. Headlines are reworded, context is omitted, statements are cut in half. And since most people consume information superficially, in stories, short posts, or quick videos, rarely does anyone go after the full version. The result? A public that believes it is well informed, but is actually trapped inside a bubble, carefully shaped by algorithms. These algorithms don't just show you what you like, they hide what you need to see to develop critical thinking. If you only consume ideas that you already agree with, your worldview becomes narrow, emotional, and reactive. Disagreement becomes a threat. Debate becomes an insult. Polarization becomes the rule. And the direct consequence of this is what Orwell would call modern doublethink. See examples: people who defend freedom but support censorship when convenient. People who preach respect but attack those who disagree. Groups that talk about diversity as long as diversity of thought does not enter the room. It is possible to hold two opposing ideas at the same time and still feel morally superior. What Orwell called doublethink is now sold as flexibility or adaptation to the times, but in essence, it is systematic mental confusion. What about surveillance? Well, it's never been more efficient. We no longer need cameras on our walls. We carry our own tracking devices, cell phones, smart TVs, voice assistants. Apps monitor what we buy, who we talk to, how much time we spend looking at a screen, and all of this is recorded, analyzed, and often sold. If in the world of 1984, people were observed by an external entity, in our world we voluntarily give up our data. And the scariest thing? Many people find this normal, even convenient. Like Winston, who at the beginning of the book still tries to resist in secret, most people face this dilemma: stay in their comfort zone or take the risk of seeing. And then there's modern psychological horror, more subtle but equally effective. We are not tortured in secret chambers, but we are constantly pressured to agree with the I. Dominant discourse. To disagree is to be cancelled, ridiculed, excluded. This creates a silent fear of speaking our minds. And where there is fear, there is no freedom. All of these elements show that Orwell's dystopia is not in the future. It is here now, disguised, digitized, softened with fancy slogans and attractive technologies. But the goal is the same: collective mind control. And that is why understanding these mechanisms is so urgent. Because only by seeing the system can we begin to escape it. In the next chapter, we will go down another step and explore what happens to the individual who lives within this reality without realizing it. What happens to those who adapt too much, to those who give up their own identity in exchange for acceptance? The answer may be more familiar than we would like to admit. The modeled citizen. What happens when you don't notice? Imagine a person who grew up surrounded by these dynamics: controlled language, filtered opinions, constant surveillance, fear of being different. Someone who never stopped to question narratives, who repeats ready-made speeches and feels uncomfortable when faced with any idea that deviates from the norm. Now imagine that this person is the majority. When brainwashing is successful, the citizen does not feel oppressed. He feels adapted, and that is precisely where the danger lies. In 1984, Winston senses that something is wrong, but he can't name the discomfort. It's an internal noise, a formless restlessness. He lives in a world where everyone seems content, even though inside they're emotionally numb. And the worst part is, they believe this state is normal. Today, it's not much different. We live surrounded by people who go with the flow. They consume the same content, repeat the same slogans, get indignant about the same things, and above all, they are afraid of standing out, afraid of being cancelled, afraid of appearing ignorant, afraid of being called radical, backward, alienated. The result is a standardized, molded citizen, someone who does not choose his values, he just copies the ones that are most accepted at the moment. Someone who does not form opinions, he just reacts to the dominant opinion. Someone who does not think, he just feels what he is allowed to feel. This citizen is functional. He works, consumes, votes, interacts on social media, and seems well-adjusted. But inside, there is an absence, a void built over the years by the slow erosion of inner autonomy. And this emptiness exacts a price: anxiety, a feeling of disconnection, a fragile identity, a constant dependence on external approval. This is why so many people live in a cycle of comparison, frustration, and repetition. They don't know who they are. They only know who they should be, and the further they distance themselves from their own essence, the more they cling to the collective identity manufactured by the system. The party in 1984 wanted exactly that: individuals who don't recognize themselves as individuals, people who confuse freedom with conformity, who believe they are choosing, when in fact they are just obeying comfortably. And when you realize it too late, you are already deeply trapped. But there is a way out. Not easy, not quick, but possible. And it all starts with a simple, courageous decision to take back control of your own mind. In the next chapter, we will see how to do this in practice, how to resist the silent brainwashing that operates in everyday life, and most importantly, how to regain control of your consciousness in the midst of a world that prefers to keep you distracted. How to unplug from the matrix. Antidotes to brainwashing. If brainwashing happens silently, daily and collectively, resisting it requires the opposite: conscious, individual, and constant effort. There is no magic pill. There are no heroes who will free you. There is only one direction: inward. Freedom begins when you decide to look lucidly at what surrounds you and at what inhabits your mind. The first step is to cultivate critical thinking. This means doubting even what seems obvious to you. Ask yourself, who is telling me this? Why is this narrative repeated so often? What is the interest behind it? Critical thinking is not about being cynical or paranoid. It is about being curious. It is about not passively accepting the first version of the facts, even if it comes from apparently reliable sources. Second, seek out diverse sources of information. If you only consume ideas that confirm what you already believe, you're stuck in a bubble, even if that bubble seems smart or up to date. Read authors you disagree with. Watch videos that provoke you. Reflect on different perspectives. This doesn't weaken your thinking, in fact it strengthens it, and it protects you from doublethink masquerading as progress. Another essential step: recognize the power of language. Pay attention to words that are being normalized or banned. Ask yourself why certain terms have been replaced. Sometimes what seems like a change in vocabulary is actually an attempt to reconfigure collective thought itself. Remember, those who define the language define the boundaries of debate. Also, practice regular introspection. Set aside moments to be silent. Disconnect from the avalanche of external stimuli. Reflect on what you think, and more importantly, on why you think that way. Are you repeating something you heard? Or did you come to this conclusion through experience, study, and reflection? Introspection is the space where autonomy is born, and without mental autonomy, there is no real freedom. Another powerful antidote is exposure to philosophy. Great thinkers from different eras have dedicated their lives to understanding how human beings are manipulated, deceived, and distracted. Reading philosophy is not an academic exercise. It is a training in mental resilience. It is learning to position oneself clearly in the face of chaos. And finally, practice the courage to disagree. You don't have to be aggressive, but you do have to be firm. You won't always be understood. You won't always be accepted, but at least you will be you. And that's the only way to live without masks, without imposed scripts, and without being swallowed up by the machine of standardization. Because at its core, resisting brainwashing is not just an act of intellectual survival, it is an act of dignity. What about you? Have you started to notice patterns of manipulation around you? Have you noticed any changes in your behavior or thinking that may not have come from you? Comment below. I want to know when you started to distrust the system. Your perception may open other people's eyes too. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the price of this freedom, because thinking for yourself is liberating, but it can also be lonely, and understanding this is part of the process of becoming truly free. The price of freedom. Why thinking for yourself is so threatening. The idea of freedom is often celebrated in speeches and slogans, but the truth is that real freedom, especially freedom of thought, is a threat to any system that is based on control. And so, it almost always comes with a price. Thinking for yourself is uncomfortable. It means stepping outside the bubble where everyone agrees. It means questioning what others take for granted. It means taking the risk of being seen as strange, arrogant, or even dangerous. Because when you start to see it, you also start to make people uncomfortable. George Orwell knew this. In 1984, Winston was not persecuted for an act of violence, nor for a political conspiracy. He was persecuted for something far more dangerous. He dared to think differently. And thinking differently is disturbing because it reveals the artificiality of consensus. When someone says no in a sea of yeses, it reveals that perhaps others are only agreeing out of convenience or fear. That's why the dissenter needs to be silenced. Not because he's false, but because he's too true. In real life, we see this all the time. People who distance themselves from certain groups because they don't repeat the same speeches. Friends who are lost due to ideological differences. Professionals who are shunned for expressing unpopular opinions. Exclusion doesn't come from malice. It comes from the collective instinct to preserve order. And here comes one of the great traps of modern thought: the confusion between belonging and submission. Many people would rather fit in than express themselves. They would rather be accepted than be authentic. But this kind of belonging comes at a cost. You have to silence your essence, adapt your ideas, pretend to believe, smile when you feel like screaming. In the end, you belong, but you don't live. You are accepted, but you are not free. Freedom of thought requires the courage to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to stand firm, even when everything around you demands conformity. And the more authoritarian the system, the more dangerous the individual thinker, because he inspires others. He shows that it is possible to step out of line and still stand. Orwell reminds us of this brutally. The greatest enemy of an oppressive regime is not the rebel who screams, it is the thinker who doubts. And if you've made it this far, you're probably already part of that uncomfortable minority that questions, analyzes, and resists. But to keep this stance alive, it takes more than awareness. It takes a permanent willingness to sustain this freedom, even when it hurts. In the next and final chapter, we will close this cycle, return to the starting point, and understand why, despite everything, it is still worth fighting for the possession of one's own mind. Rebellion begins in the mind. If you've made it this far, you've already taken the most important first step. You've started to look at the world with different eyes, and perhaps you've realized that the real prison isn't made of bars. It's made of implanted ideas, programmed fears, and a false sense of freedom that only serves to keep you quiet, productive, and predictable. But the real rebellion begins where almost no one looks, inside the mind. Orwell wrote 1984 as a warning, not a manual. He wanted to show us that manipulation comes not just from the shouts of an explicit dictatorship, but from the constant whisper of systems that constantly tell us what to think, what to feel, who to hate, who to admire. Resisting this does not require violence. It requires clarity, awareness, and courage. It is thinking with autonomy, feeling with honesty, acting with integrity. As the book itself reminds us, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. If that is granted, everything else follows. And now I ask you, what are you going to do with this freedom? If this video made sense to you, please leave a like. This helps the channel grow and shows that it's worth continuing to produce this type of content. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now so you don't miss the next videos. We still have a lot to discuss and think about together.